Dahmer, Zodiac. Do these names sound familiar? Well, they should. These are two of the most infamous murderers around. So you know their names. And you know that they probably killed some people and wrote some letters. But do you know their true story? Do you know what happened to them in jail? Do you know their childhood? Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer. Their lives, their kills, their deaths. So we start off with Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, he's probably the most infamous, cannibal, rapist guy around. And he had a normal childhood. But then at age 15, he became distant. He became uninterested in most things. He became really intrigued by dead animals and drinking. He became so intrigued in these that his father kicked him out and made him enlist in military school. But then, half a year later, he got kicked out of military school for his alcoholism. So then he decided to move down to Florida with his grandma. Everything was going fine down there until his grandma went into his bedroom one day, found a male mannequin in his closet and a gun under his bed. So then she went down to the basement where Dahmer spent most of his time. Down there she found dead dissected animals, chemicals that he was using to dissolve the animals in, and other freaky things. So needless to say, she gave him the boot. So after that, he got a job at a chocolate factory and he got his own apartment. Shortly after he got his own apartment, he got arrested for drugging and kidnapping a 13-year-old boy and sexually assaulting him. There's Dahmer in the picture. He got 5 years probation, 1 year at work camp, and he got on the sex offenders list. This is when the murders started happening. His first murder was Stephen Hicks. Stephen Hicks was a hitchhiker Dahmer picked up on his way home from work. He gave him a beer, gave him a meal, and said, yeah, everything's good, until Stephen tried to leave. Then Dahmer hit him over the head with a 10-pound dumbbell, killing him, and buried him in his backyard. His second kill, Stephen Toomey, was the first of many. What he would do is he would go to a gay bar, buy some guys some drinks, get them really drunked up, take them back home, have sex with them, kill, dismember them, and eat them. Then he got into little boys. He wanted a sexual submissive partner who would never leave him. So he got into the idea of making young boys zombies. What he would do is he would rape the young boys, and then he would drill holes into their brains and pour acid or boiling water into their brains, making them a temporary zombie. But one little boy, Tracy Edwards, luckily escaped from Dahmer's house and alerted the police. Police came in and they found thousands of photos hung up in his house. Needless to say, he got arrested immediately. They found an altar made of skull, bones, skins. They saw organs in jars in his freezer and fridge. They found severed heads all over, and his bedroom was bloody. Let me just tell you. Worst part of it is, Dahmer confessed to doing it all. This is one of his victims in his bathtub and the chemicals he was using to dissolve the bodies. But he also pled he was insane. He pled that he was so insane that there was no way he could have committed these crimes and that he needs to go to a mental facility. So after a 3-week trial, 10 out of 12 jurors found him sane enough to do these crimes. So they sentenced him to 15 lifetimes or 957 years in jail. He didn't even make a year in jail. His prison mates found out what he did and they severely beat him to death in prison. He died from blood hemorrhaging on the way to the hospital. Our next killer is the Zodiac, and he's actually more known for his mysteriousness and his letters more than he is the actual murders. A lot of people look over that people actually died. The first people who got murdered were David and Betty, and they were a couple of high schoolers. They were parked outside of a small town in California, out on this road, and the police found their bodies in their car. About 6 months later, they found 2 more young adults, Darlene and Mike, in their car. Luckily, Mike survived, but Darlene did not. Mike said that a man came up to him, shined a flashlight into their car, and then shot them both. He gave a brief description, but nothing really the cops could go off of. 4 months later, 2 young adults, Brian and Cecilia, were picnicking by the lake. A man in an executioner's costume came up to them, and on his forehead had a circle with a cross running through, tied them up and stabbed them. Cecilia sadly died, sorry Cece, and Brian lived though. And he gave a brief description of the man, but he was in a costume, so they couldn't really tell who it was. The last murder was of Paul. Paul was a cab driver, and he was shot from his cab. But a group of teenagers actually witnessed the murder happen. They went to the police, they gave a pretty decent sketch of the guy, as seen here, and so they knew what the guy looked like. So they went back to the crime scene to see if they could find him. A man matching this description went up to them to leave, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, leave. Because they were told they were looking for a black suspect. They were so focused on race, they overlooked the fact that they had just let the killer go. And this was confirmed in his famous letters that he sent in, he said that the cops had actually had them in his hands and he just walked right past them. So the letters. This is the most famous part of the killer. After Darlene and Mike died, newspapers flooded. The media was flooded with this story. People were saying that they were the killer, that they knew the killer was their cousin. Everyone wanted to be a part of it. But then some strange letters came to the San Francisco Examiner, and this was actually from the killer, and he called himself the Zodiac Killer. And he sent proof that it was the actual killer sending these letters. He sent in pieces of clothing from the victims and details of the murders that no one even knew about except for the police on the scene of the crime. And these contained cryptograms. Now these ciphers and cryptograms are the most famous part because they have never been solved. There's a 340 character cryptogram that they are still working on. Fans and fanatics are still obsessing over the fact that they can't figure out what this message says. And the killer said that if you do, there's 6 of them, these cryptograms, you will find out who the killer is, who actually did it. But no one's figured them out yet. And this is one of the cryptograms. He signed all his letters with his famous circle with a cross running through. That's how you know that it's associated with the Zodiac Killer. So yeah, people are still trying to figure that out. So Jeffrey Dahmer got beaten severely and died. He didn't even make it through 1 year of his 957 years that he had to serve. Zodiac Killer actually murdered people, which most people overlook, and his letters have not been solved yet. So now when you hear the names Jeffrey Dahmer and Zodiac Killer, you won't just think of a cannibal in letters. You'll actually think of their childhood and what their lives and what they have been through.